Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jen Budd, your host for Borderland Talks. And today with me, I have a wonderful friend who I met through an unfortunate story, but we've been strong friends for, gosh, Paula, how long now? Over a year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, over a year. So this is Paula Santos-Young of Achieve Greatness. And we became friends because I don't even know how we first met.
I actually sent you an email from, I think it was either Twitter or your TikTok. And I sent you an email introducing myself, and the rest is history because you actually responded and called me.
I wanted to hear what your story was. Honestly, when I was an agent in the mid 90s, fentanyl wasn't a thing. Um, what do they call these drugs? Designer drugs or whatever
Yes,
now that they can manufacture off of AI intelligence and so forth. And so I think probably the most dangerous drug in my days was methamphetamine. And
correct.
even then we in the Border Patrol, we barely got any of that. We mostly get marijuana in the Border Patrol. Just because those are more expensive drugs, it's when you're talking about trying to cross them through rivers and mountains, that's expensive drugs if you lose them.
Right.
Marijuana is everywhere. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, not to say that it doesn't occasionally come across, but it's just not as likely. Tell me first about how wonderful Andrew was and who he was, and then tell me the unfortunate part.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jen, so very much for having me on. I'm humbled and honored, not just in the way that we met, but that our path continues to be one that we're going to be working together for a very long time. I truly believe that when people are brought into your path, there's a reason. There's a divine intervention for everything. And Andrew, my oldest child, my firstborn, and he was just someone who would walk into the room and just you knew he was there. He just had a sense about him of really having this aura about him where he people gravitated to him. He loved sports, he loved to cook. Every time he would cook, he would send me a video and be, look, mom, I made this today. He just
Mhm.
had a passion for things like that. And in sports, he absolutely loved sports. He got into basketball really because, again, sports and what brings people together, regardless of your background, is a sporting
Mhm.
event. And he actually started Achieve Greatness. And one of the things that he started it for was his mission, which is still on the page today, is he did this because of bringing together the youth of the towns and cities that he was living in, because the youth really didn't have a voice. And let's face it, some of the youth today don't even have a two-parent home. Or when they do
Mhm.
go home, it's the latchkey kids, like what we did, right? Because
Yeah.
that's who we
Yeah.
are, Generation X. And he brought this together more of a mentoring ship. And he did this for kids that were in elementary all the way up to college level. And then he actually became an assistant coach at a college in basketball.
Hmm.
And he loved it. And again, they had to dress up, and Andrew just loved to dress up. So let's fast forward to 2022. So 2022, March 8th, we received the news that no parent should ever get, which was I was at work and I was actually doing payroll that day. I'll never forget. It was a Tuesday, and my husband was at work, and my youngest son was home, and two detectives show up at our house. And I saw them on the ring camera because Andrew was living in Annapolis, Maryland. So
Hmm.
all of a sudden, I knew my heart just sank. I knew as soon as I saw the two detectives coming to the house. And
Yeah.
I started calling my son, and he wasn't answering. And then my husband ended up calling me, and he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, I already know.
Mm.
It's just a sense of when you have a child, the connection that you have as a parent. And I say this all the time to people, when you have parents and you have that connection, even when your parents pass away and they go to heaven, you don't lose that connection. You always will have
Mm.
that with them. And with a child, it's just the same. And we received the news that he had been found, in the apartment complex he was living in Annapolis, under a gazebo. someone who was walking their dog had found him. And when the police got there, the detectives, everything, the only thing he had around him was his phone, he had his wallet, and he had marijuana. He had a joint that
Hmm.
had not even been fully smoked. It was more than half was still left. So, of course, you get this kind of news and your world is shattered. It's kind of like, and I say this and I don't mean this in a terrible way for those in the military, but it's like a bomb has gone off, right? And now you don't know if you're coming or going. You have no sense of time, concept, or anything, and nothing matters anymore. And trying to put the pieces back is something that I think any parent will say, we don't ever really put the pieces back because our pieces are now shattered. So what we try to do is we try to take those shattered pieces, and some of us have turned into awareness and advocacy like I have, and some just need more time, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So what we did is we took Achieve Greatness and we turned it into a 501c3 here in Massachusetts. And we have been doing awareness, advocacy, prevention, and education. And we are continuing Andrew's memory. But what we're also doing is we're also focusing on the things that our government officials are not doing. And let's get into that. You know, many times when I do speaking engagements, people will say to me, well, Paula, you have to understand that it's the Republicans. It was all the Republicans. Well, really, because if we all take a step back and we all remember the national convention that happened for the Republican National Convention, then the Democratic National Convention, the Republicans actually talked about fentanyl and they had somebody there
Hmm.
who spoke about it. As you know, Jen, the
Hmm.
Democrats did not. They had 4 full days where they could have spoken about this for 2 minutes. They didn't even give us 2 minutes. So all of the grieving parents and everyone that has lost a loved one to fentanyl poisoning, because it is not an overdose, and we'll get into that, really got a slap in the face. And I think I
Yeah.
don't think I know what's happening is you can talk to all parents across the United States, including myself, and we will tell you we're not waiting on our government. We're taking things into our own hands. We are going out and we're continuing the boots on the ground grassroots movement of educating, prevention, awareness, and advocacy. And in doing so, we're bringing the people with us, like yourself, who can really speak on this, because we can speak on it to the level of where people will say this, well, you become subject matter experts. Yeah, we do, but we still need the experts like you to stand with us, because
Hmm.
that's where people are truly going to listen to what's happening, right? And then let's talk about marijuana. Nobody wants to talk about this. People keep saying, well, Paula, that's not true, because if you light up marijuana, you light up the joint, when it gets to a certain temperature, the fentanyl disseminates. Really? Because I'll bring scientists in here that will debunk that. That is so not true.
Wait,
I
wait. So people are actually arguing with you that your son could not have died in that manner. Is that what you just told me?
That is correct. That
And
is correct.
and I'm pretty sure your son had an autopsy because how old
Yes,
was he when he passed?
he was 33, and
Oh,
yes, he
yeah,
had the
that's right. You told me he was 33. And so he's a young, healthy man. He has an autopsy. They show that the fentanyl is obviously in his system. And I mean, I tell everybody knows I smoke marijuana. I smoke marijuana in California for my hands, for my nerve stuff.
right,
And your story got me like, I don't smoke from anybody else. I know where my stuff is coming from. And he didn't even smoke half of it. And somebody's telling you, no, your son could not have. This is like when people say, no, you couldn't have been raped in the Border Patrol Academy.
right,
And I'm like,
right.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is where we have to rebuke people, right? Because it continues to
Mm-hmm.
happen, Jen. You know it and I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, which is kind of sad and morbid, but I actually carry my son's medical examiner report on my phone. So when
Mm.
people are sitting there saying, I'm like, okay, what does this say? It says fentanyl,
Mm-hmm.
marijuana, and xylazine. And no, it wasn't a pill, because you can continue reading it, because that's the question I asked the medical examiner when I spoke to her, because I spoke to the medical examiner from Baltimore, and I demanded to know, because I wanted to know, was it a pill? Because people were saying to me, Paula, there's no way that can be. There's just no way. Something's wrong somewhere. And I asked to speak to her, and I will be very honest with you, Jen. She called me back, and I
Mm.
appreciated the fact that she did that. And she said to me, she said, Mrs. Young, he did not have anything in his system. This is not from a pill. There was no needle marks anywhere. There was nothing. This
Mm-hmm.
was from the
Mm-hmm.
marijuana.
So you're also having to deal with, and I have to deal with this when I talk about border patrol and stuff, is these lay people thinking that they know all of this because they've watched a few shows on Fox or MSNBC or wherever they get their news,
Right.
and they think they know everything, and they have the nerve to come up to somebody who has lived this reality, this truth. and
Oh, yeah.
and I would imagine that the feeling that you're getting, even if they don't right out say it, and many people sometimes might say it, and you'll let me know if they do, is this attitude of, well, you just don't know, and your son was really a drug addict, and you just don't want to face the truth. Do you feel like that?
Oh, I belong to many associations now, which
Mm,
I'm not debuting who I belong to, right? I mean, we have to kind of have a coalition, just kind of like our partnership. And many of the partnerships I belong to is, like the New Bedford Opioid Task Force, the Boston
mm-hmm,
Opioid Task Force, all these task forces that I belong to. And one of them in particular, they said to me, they said, well, Paula, well, I understand it was marijuana, but that's still an addict. That's
no.
still, and I'm like, and I'm, and I'm like,
No.
listen, I am not taking away from those who suffer from substance use. I'm not. I
Mm-hmm.
will never do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it is different. I said, Andrew had a medical marijuana card, as many people do. He
Mm-hmm.
smoked because he would not take a pill. He hated taking medicine. And he did this because he had PTSD due to a
Mm-hmm.
car accident that he had been in 3 years prior. So that's why he was on the medical marijuana. The marijuana was because of the car
Mm-hmm.
accident, and also social anxiety and some other things that he had been diagnosed with. So, and then you get the, well, well, he should have known who we got it from, or obviously he shouldn't have gotten it from someone he didn't know. He got it from his assistant coach,
Mm-hmm.
someone
Mm-hmm.
he did know. And the
Mm-hmm.
person
Mm-hmm.
told him, I will go to the dispensary and then I'll bring it to you, because Andrew was working. So
Mm-hmm.
stop. So when you're sitting here debuking a grieving parent and how their child passed away, or their loved
Mm-hmm.
one, if you don't think
Mm-hmm.
we're going to come back at you, you have another thing coming, because we're not shutting up anymore. We're not going to take this abuse, just like you, Jen. You're not going to take the
Mm-hmm.
abuse, because
Mm-hmm.
enough with the, oh, it could not have happened. That's not the, stop,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because this is my story, just like that's your
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yeah. Do you know, did it come from the cannabis company laced already? Do you know?
See, unfortunately, what's also happening, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot, Jen, is when we are losing a lot of the innocent lives that we're losing to fentanyl poisoning, nothing is being done about it. So there's no legal action being taken at all, because you have prosecutors from many different states. Like I was told by the prosecutor from Maryland, well, Mrs. Young, we don't have the people to go after anyone. And we brought in the person who gave him the marijuana, and it didn't render much.
Didn't
Really?
render much. Hmm.
Really? So I have the head of the detectives in Annapolis telling me they brought in the person who gave him the marijuana that killed him, but it didn't render much. Because I'm sorry, I'm not a police officer, nor have I ever been, but I know for a fact that's called a drug induced homicide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they've done nothing. And I'm not the only story of this where, and I think the biggest this service right now that is occurring, besides just the infraction of the fentanyl poisonings that are continuing across the United States and now into Europe, is that you have this mind concept of, well, now it's just fentanyl. We've saturated this too much, so we don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
So continuing to lose almost 300 a day, which is equivalent to a plane crashing, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, guess what? Parents like myself are going to continue to talk about it. We're not going to go away.
So, what was your first initial impression on how these drugs are getting into the United States and who's to blame?
I can tell you that prior to losing Andrew, I knew nothing about fentanyl. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have said to me, Paula, let's talk about fentanyl. I would have looked at you like a deer in the headlights. After we lost him and really started the advocacy, which was a year later, because I needed to really get my head together, I knew where it was coming from. I knew that it was coming from China. I know that China was making it and sending it to Mexico and then coming through the Mexican border. I knew that. And I knew that because of the partners that I had already created and what they were telling me. Did I know the
Okay.
extent of what I know today? No, absolutely not. No, I didn't know that we have people who are getting their pockets lined with the fentanyl crisis, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
going away. And we have people on both sides of the aisle who will sit there and tell you, a family member, to your face in front of a room full of people, I am so sorry for your loss. How can I help you? And then walk away and not do shit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
so
what is their explanation to you of when you say, why does this keep continuing? Why can we not stop the fentanyl of getting into the country? Are they telling you it's because of migrants? Is that what they're telling you?
they're actually not saying anything. They're just saying that they are working on it. We know it's coming from the border. That's what they say. We know it's coming from the border, and we know that we have a big task at hand. They're giving you a scripted response that every single politician is now saying. And the scripted response is, I am so sorry for your loss. I know we know we hear what's going on. We're getting the op-eds. Yes, if you need us or our office, please reach out. Done.
Would you like to take a picture with me?
Yes, yes, yes. I forgot that. I'm sorry. Correct. Yes. Yeah. Let's take
So,
a. Yes.
but essentially, what was your thought? What is the different organizations' thoughts is to, like, does it impress them when politicians come out and say, we're going to hire 10,000 more border patrol agents and that's going to help solve the fentanyl problem? Do people believe that will help solve the fentanyl problem?
I think people right now are at a point, and I know many parents that have organizations across the United States. I think they're of the understanding that they're not believing anything they say. To be honest with you, Jen,
Mhm.
they're
Okay.
just
Well,
like
that's good.
yeah, they're just like, look, we're done with all of them. We're done with the government. We're done. They have shown us time and time again that they are not going to stand with us on this, and we have to do this on our own. I mean, look, let's talk about it, okay? The parents that have been doing the advocacy before me, which, as you know, is huge.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the grieving parents and the army of parents, as I call them, continues to grow, not decrease, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the parents that have been doing this prior to myself, being it 5 years, 10 years, however it's been, they will sit here and say to you that they put the blueprint on the advocacy and awareness of this and the prevention. And then you have organizations like the DEA come in and say to the parents, hey, we're going to partner with you now. And now we're going to do this outreach. Really? Because what do you think the parents have been doing for the whole time?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So now you're coming, and what you're doing is you're just stepping on their coattails. You're not coming
You're
up with,
taking our work and matching it with your badge And I mean, come on, what a bunch of pigs.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, and this is why so many organizations, Jen, out there today, like mine, are kind of combating together and
Hmm.
really connecting and building a coalition of parents who have been doing this and have been doing it since day one. And we're not depending on anybody anymore. We don't care what your title says.
My understanding of fentanyl is that a lot of the precursor chemicals are coming from uh, China and other Asian countries, and that when those big, I guess they're just, we would call them cargo containers. You see them sometimes
Yes,
on the back of railroad cars. You see them on the back of semi trucks when they come in, and then you see them on big ship liners. So they come
correct.
across on these ship liners stacked, I don't know, so tall, and and if it is marked, my understanding, at least years ago, they could have changed it, but my understanding is that if it's marked to go to Mexico and it's landing in LA port and it's going to go right down to TJ, CBP does not even inspect it, does
Right.
not even open it. So the precursors are getting through to make the drug. That's
Yeah.
one problem, if that's still going on, and I'm sure it is. And then two, the right wing media, and quite frankly, even mainstream media, liberal media, has done it too because they don't have anybody down here on the border. They just repeat what Fox and News Nation and OAN say. This conflation between an asylum seeker or a migrant that's maybe looking for work, but not a
Right.
criminal, they conflate that with drug smugglers. And
Yeah.
the majority of the fentanyl that we apprehend on our southern border is coming through the ports of entry legally. So that
Yeah.
means it's either strapped to a person's body or it is in the back of a semi truck, sometimes hidden in small vehicles and this and that. There's all these, you know, it's kind of like a spy when you're putting your spies out there. You're going to hedge your bets. You're going to send this person there, and you're going to have overlapping operations and stuff so that you can at least get what it is you need. And so they're going to have overlapping operations. It's going to come
Right.
across in a lot of different ways. The main way, the Border Patrol, which is the guys in green, versus CBP, which is the people in blue at the ports of entry, the main way that the Border Patrol get fentanyl in between the ports is typically not by catching migrants with the fentanyl on them because they're not interested in smuggling drugs. They're interested in
Right.
work or asylum. And if they get caught with drugs, then they're in deep doo doo. And if they get caught and then they lose the drugs, then the cartel will put them in deep doo doo after they get out of prison. So when you see Border Patrol catch fentanyl, it's generally almost always at their checkpoints.
Yeah.
And so we can't tell where that fentanyl's coming, but most of that fentanyl Border Patrol gets is coming from the ports. It just happens to
Right.
then get caught at a checkpoint as it comes north. And the reason why fentanyl gets across, and like last month, I was in Nogales, Sonora. So that's directly south of Nogales, Arizona, just on the other side, sister cities. And I sat there on the border and I watched a train go by. And I've done train checks as a Border Patrol agent. And I know the speed that they're rolling at when you're jumping on them. And so they were doing a train check, and I could tell. And when they come north through the ports, they can, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure they can run them through x rays. But at the same
Yep.
time, they didn't stop this train, this big long
Right.
train that took 10 minutes, 20 minutes to get from Sonora, Mexico to Arizona, rolling slow enough that you could jump on it and check it if you need to. And they're not going to jump on and check every car, but they can have a lookout, which is what I used to do, or they have the cameras and they can see in there. And there's not enough time for them to check the drugs. So they are not, and they do not check the trains like they should for drugs. And they are not stopping and checking the semis that come through. So there is a program within CBP that if you run a company and you allow CBP to come in and inspect you and say and look at your background and look at your employees and make sure there's no criminals and stuff. Like let's just say, and I'm not using this other than just any famous name, Toyota. Let's say Toyota.
Yeah.
Let's say they have a factory in Mexico. They have a need to get cars across and this and that. And so, or pieces for cars and they put them on trucks that are then maybe built in the United States, you know, and so
Right.
they put them in these cargo containers. And because they do this often and regularly, it causes them a problem when it's inspected and it slows it down. When it's really inspected beyond just a casual look and an x-ray and this and that, but really
Right.
inspected. And and so what they do is they open themselves up, just kind of like Sentry is, where if you did it personally, you'd say, go ahead and check me. I've never committed a crime. You
Right.
can stop my car from now and then. But most of the time when I come across, you'll see I've paid the extra money, you've done the background checks, and you're going to waive me, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean they won't stop you, but for the most, and it's to help speed up traffic and this and that. Well, we've already found that when companies do this, just like when people do this, that the cartel is going to take advantage of every single
Yeah.
little thing. And so
Yep.
essentially, you're just paying to smuggle. Now, again, I'm not saying Toyota's doing this. I'm just using this as an example. So even if Toyota is putting parts on a truck, it doesn't mean that that truck driver or truck doesn't get stopped by cartel and then forces drugs on it, or there's some kind of, there's so many ways to do it. And that's
Exactly.
why you have cops, is so they can figure this out, right?
Right.
We don't expect them to be perfect. So my understanding of the fentanyl crisis and why fentanyl continues to get in the country, even though it's killing Americans, and we act like migrants trying to find asylum is killing Americans, when we know flat out fentanyl is literally killing Americans like your son. We have the literal evidence that it's happening.
Yeah.
They will not address this. They will not talk about this. And I say they, I mean the politicians will not talk about this because the problem is if you address it and you admit that that's where it's coming in, just free flowing right on through, then you would have to hire more CBP agents to do the inspections and create whatever machines you need to do actual inspections and stuff. They're way far behind on that. But more than anything, it would slow the economy down to
Right.
a point that it would hurt capitalism. And that is more important than your son's life.
Yeah.
Have you
And we're,
ever asked a politician about that? Because I know you know that since we've talked. You know
yes,
this part that I'm telling everybody. You know the
absolutely.
truth now. Have you asked that of anybody? And do they give you a response?
I've asked that and so many other things. Like one of the things that we all know, and you know this, Jen, and the audience knows, yes, fentanyl is coming from Mexico, but let's talk about how fentanyl is already in the United States and they're literally making it without any help from anybody. It's your neighbor that's now making it because they've gotten the pill press off of Amazon and it was delivered to them by
Mm,
UPS or FedEx. And who's going to question it? There is nothing that is being stopped when things are being delivered to you, whether it's FedEx, UPS, your local, your US mail. And that's through the de minimis loophole, as you know. And you
mm-hmm.
talked about the cargo containers. Yeah, of course things are coming through the cargo containers because at the end of the day, this is what it is. When you have, and anybody in the medical industry who's hearing, Jen, you're going to know this because you're smarter than I am, but when you have 150 analogs and you know that the cartel has literally only used 4 to make the ingredients to fentanyl and put other stuff in it, then what does that tell you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, come on. Like, and
Yeah.
when you bring statistics and factual information up to those who are in office, you get the what I call the deer in the headlights look. You get it's almost like they look at you like, oh my God, how does this person know this? Wow.
They're like, wait, that's not on the script.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hold
Yeah.
on, wait a minute, wait, hold
Right,
time
Cat.
out. Right. Like, wait, they're talking to me about the de minimis loophole and they're talking to me about analogs. Oh, hell, no, no, hold on. I got to go back to my 8 to rewrite the script. And it's almost like, and I'm sure, Jen, you see this. It's like, how dumb do you think we are? Do you honestly think that those of us who are doing this, and even you, Jen, doing what you do in the advocacy work, do they think that we are so dumb and so far out there that we're not going to do our homework to give factual information when we do speak. I mean, and that's what totally, even today, it blows my mind. I mean, because I don't even, when I speak and when I do an event, I will, I will, out of respect, invite the governor, the
Mm-hmm.
district
Mm-hmm.
attorney, of that so county. I will, out of respect, do that. Do they come? No.
Yeah, I used to invite chiefs. They would never come.
Yeah, and it's funny because I said to someone, I said I just had an event in Springfield, Massachusetts, at a college, and I had, not only is he a senator in Massachusetts, but I had three state representatives and a congressman who were all supposed to come this day, all confirmed, all supposed to come. One of them being the chair of Homeland Security. I get a text message and a phone call that day of my event to say nobody is coming because they've been called to the state house here in Massachusetts on a vote that they have to vote on because the speaker of the house demanded that everybody go and vote on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
really?
They're like
Really?
children. They're like children, quite honestly. You're like, I can see the chocolate all over your face. Mm-hmm. So stop lying and just say you don't give a shit. Just say it.
Exactly.
I mean, they just don't care. They just will not talk about it, and the media will not talk about it. And it just feels like nobody has any kind of convictions or morals or ethics anymore. And your story, which is many people's stories in this country, and it's just like Congress is not behaving like a legislative body.
Right.
Fentanyl is not a new drug. It's a relatively new drug, but not super new. But there are other designer drugs that are coming out every day that
Yes.
we have no ways of detecting.
Correct. You are
And they're
you are correct.
designer drugs that can kill you even faster than
Yes.
fentanyl can. And nobody's talking about it because they're so busy arguing over if the flag should be half staff when Trump takes the oath or not because Jimmy Carter died. And you're just like, what are you all doing up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like where, when you go into an organization, right? And you know that you're always going to have the naysayers. You're going to have the people that, those in the quote unquote, they think they're in the ivory tower. But what's happening is that you're continuing to see, it's kind of like the mouse in that little, the round circle thing. It's
Uh-huh.
it's
The
the
exercise wheel.
yeah, it's like the mouse going in the exercise wheel over and over and over again. And when is someone going to just say, stop?
Uh-huh.
And I just don't see that happening. Everyone is just putting everything into the same bucket, and they're not really focusing and taking the time to say, hey, hold on a minute, wait a minute, Jen did this, she's the expert, she was there
Yeah.
on the ground, her eyes saw
Yeah.
this, hey, we should listen to her. It's like, oh well, okay, Jen, we understand, yeah, Paula, we get it, we hear you, but no, F that. There is no but. It's people like you and I need to be sitting at that table because the people that are
Yeah.
at the table continue to do the same. I mean, come on, what's the meaning of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's
And
exactly what.
doing deterrence policies since 1994. They have not deterred any drug. They have not deterred any migrant from crossing illegally. None.
Yeah.
So
So
your deterrence policies have failed, or else we wouldn't have had the last 4 years of people crossing excessively.
2025 is the year of awakening. That's what I've told people. It's the year of awakening because it's the year that people are starting to see folks for who they are, finally. And it's the
Yeah.
year where people are either going to say, hey, I'm going to work with Jen because she is someone I want to work with. I want her on my team. Or, hey, I'm not going to work with Susie because I've seen what Susie's all about. And I think that's truly what needs to happen because when you build a coalition, and Jen, you talked about it, when you build a coalition of the right people coming together, things are going to get done because it doesn't matter that we're not politicians. a lot of things were done in history, and it wasn't by politicians. It was people like you and I and others
Mm-hmm.
who were boots on the ground, grassroots movement people.
Mm-hmm. People that wouldn't shut up and go away.
There you go. There you go.
That's who it is. And I think I think it's the systems too. The systems are and obviously the people make the systems. I get that.
Yes.
But it's, I I still I find myself talking to my neighbors who I know are Trump voters and misunderstand things, and then when I say, well, this is how this goes on and this goes on, and then they agree and we agree, and I'm like, see, we can always come together. It's just these
Yes.
people up there that don't want us to come together. It's these people that don't really want you to know the truth about how much fentanyl's in the country and how many people are dying. They don't want my story to come out because I'm both proud to have served my country and been a Border Patrol agent and also ashamed. And let's deal with the reality of that. Let's talk about
Right.
that,
Right.
And so I really, I know, like what it is to go through severe trauma and come out the other side fucked up from it in many ways and then say, I'm going to use my trauma to educate and make a change, Paula.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I appreciate you so much. I don't get enough time to talk to you, but I know how much it takes to do that. And I know you probably have days where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And just like I do. And yet I still see you out here. I still see you out here struggling to help other families not lose their loved ones to fentanyl.
Yes.
And for that, you're a shero in my mind. And
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
thankful
But
to
so
call
are
you a
you.
friend.
No, and thank you. And and I adore and have so much love for you because of what you went through, right? And it takes a
Mm,
lot to tell your story. And
mm,
I think this is one of the things that this is where I'm starting to see a little bit of the change. And I will say just a little bit of a
mm-hmm,
change where people are having the awakening, as I call it. And the reason they're saying that is because people are seeing on both sides of the aisle, again, not everybody, but some, where when you're coming to someone, you're coming to them with your story. And nine
mm-hmm,
times out of 10, your story is coming from trauma.
mm-hmm,
And you will find that person, as you said, you have some people who are very good and who are listening and
mm-hmm,
who truly have that empathy and that compassion. Because I feel that here in our country, that's what we've lost.
mm-hmm.
We've
Yeah,
lost
I agree.
empathy and compassion.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. And that's a, like I am unapologetically pro-immigrant, and I also am not for open borders at the same time because I have seen some of the bad stuff that comes across our borders, and we do have to patrol that and so forth. But for 2025 for me, Paula, I've been like, I'm not ashamed to show my vulnerability and to show my trauma because I think that makes me stronger. And I want to
Yes.
teach everybody that. I want to teach everybody that because that's the only thing that saved my life, quite honestly. And I would imagine that you've gone through a lot too in deciding how you're going to go on without Andrew and make something out of this. And it takes a lot of strength to do that. And I just really appreciate you and I love you to death. I just want you to know that.
Oh, thank you. But I
Hmm.
tell people ask me all the time, they're like, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? Because I don't know if I could even function. That's what I get
Hmm.
told all the time. And I say to people, I say, because grieving parents like us, we didn't get a choice.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're doing this because not only are we doing it to save your life, and because we know what it's like to have to pick out a casket and
Hmm.
to no longer have that child, but we're also doing it because it's keeping us alive.
Hmm.
And there are some parents, unfortunately, and I will share this here, that I've met in my path that are no longer here because
Hmm.
they took their own lives, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
And I think this is one of the things when we talk about trauma, Jen, and even when I talk a lot about mental health. I mean, I talked at a high school not too long ago with 700 kids, 9 through 12. And I said to them, I said, you see me standing in front of you, but I have every medical diagnosis you could think of. I have the
Mm-hmm.
PTSD, the anxiety, the depression. I have all of it since losing my child. How could I not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, I also know that my son, because I know my son sees what I'm doing and he's
Mm-hmm.
standing right there with me every step in every moment of what I do, whether it's having a forum where we have 300 people who are listening from law enforcement to the medical industry to the education to federal and state, and they're actually listening to the people that I brought to the table, you know
Mm-hmm.
or or I'm talking to high school kids and they're coming to me and they're like, thank you for doing this because no one's doing it. And or
Mm-hmm.
the administration, oh wow, we didn't know about the emojis, why isn't this being sent out? Or you have a lot of those in the recovery community who are struggling also because they're struggling with their substance use, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get put into a clinic where you're there for 3 months and then, okay, Charlie, nice to see you, bye. What?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
they need
Yeah.
more help. they need
Yeah.
they need to have you with them constantly. In a lot of the fentanyl poisonings that are happening, a lot of folks are people who were in recovery, come out, go unfortunately deal with the people they were dealing with before, and now they're not here. You know,
Yeah.
and and, and then you have the stories, and I talk about this all the time. You don't just have the moms, you have the dads, you have the siblings that now lost their brother or sister. You have everybody in that family that's the domino effect of the
Mm-hmm.
trauma that it's caused from losing that person. And people don't talk about that. It's just,
Yeah.
oh, well, they see us moms and they're like, oh, well, look at what they're doing. Yay for them. But they don't see what's behind us
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
the immense weight that we are carrying because of everything that we have to deal with. And
Mm-hmm.
this is why when I talk, and I always talk about mental health, and let's talk about how mental health has failed the American
Mm-hmm.
system. I mean,
Yeah.
I have so many parents that have said to me, Paula, my son was in recovery, my daughter was in recovery, and they try to go to the hospital, and the hospital wouldn't even talk to them, or they try to put them in the suicide ward, or they said that they were crazy, and I'm like, are you effing kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
there's just it's like you said, Jen, there's so much brokenness. And at what point are we going to come and say, these pieces are broken? We
Mm-hmm.
need to bring them together. We need to collectively come up with a plan that's going to help people, because people are going to continue to unfortunately be poisoned by this. I mean, yeah, the CDC came out the other day and they said, oh, great, yay, yay, rah, rah, the numbers are down. Really? Because I'll bring a lot of other people that will tell you that that's not true.
The lack of community in the United States, and all of that comes around to the what you were saying, the lack of sympathy, humanity, empathy, and we have some very serious problems on our hands. And I think one of them is just that. I think that allows us to then turn and look at the suffering, like seeing children have their arms lacerated by razor wire. We see it in video and in pictures, and nobody is like, "What? That's being
Right,
done in my name?" And then we
right.
see all the fentanyl deaths. Can we line all their caskets up and look at it and then go, wait a minute, you know? But yet, one CEO gets assassinated and the whole system mobilizes for that.
Oh, they want his head for that. They want his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They want his. But you know what? I'm not promoting what he did. I am not, and nor
Mm-hmm.
will I
I
ever.
agree.
But at the same time, what does that tell you about our society?
It's also the media reaction though, Paula, and the political reaction too. I mean, go back to when that billionaire submarine ended up at the bottom of the ocean. Was it like 5 or 6 billionaires? And
Yes,
they mobilized the whole fucking world for that.
yes,
And
yes,
yet, in the Mediterranean, they are filming themselves capsizing migrant boats and
Yeah.
killing 600, 700 people and filming it and being like, well, that's justice. You
Yeah. Yeah.
know, it's like, what? You
Yeah.
just got upset about 5 billionaires at the bottom of the ocean, spent billions of dollars trying to find their stupid bodies. And these are people that are alive right in front of you. And now you want an award because you killed. I'm just like, they
Correct.
matter. They see them. They don't see you. They don't
No.
see me. They don't see your son. They don't see any
No.
of that. But
No.
people with money, they can clearly see.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I say that we've gotten to a society where, and I just had this conversation with one of my moms today, and she's actually in California. I was checking in on her like I did with you. And I said to her, I said, and please forgive this comment, but it's the white elitist mentality
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of, I'm better than you,
Mm-hmm.
because I have this much money in the bank, and I'm a Vanderbilt, I'm a Rothschild, I'm a, Jeff Bezos, so you're not nothing to me. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the problem, is
Mm-hmm.
because all of those folks forget that if it wasn't for the people who made them the money, they wouldn't even be who they are today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, let's talk about how, again, society is so far around the corner that they're not thinking about, what was America built on? America was built on the melting pot, bringing people together and all of us having compassion for one another. We are not there today. There are people telling people don't bother coming to America. You don't
Oh
want to
yeah, a
come here.
lot of people. But I think America was built on that as an ideal. I don't know
Yes.
that we've ever truly reached it. I think kind of after World War II, we had the possibility of reaching that. But I think our past history with racism and slavery and refusing to address that prevents us from ever getting to
Yeah.
that eventual point. But
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why, again, like you said, and I said, and we've been talking about this, is the grassroots movement organizations across the United States and people like yourself and so many others that have said, I'm not listening to what you have to say. This is what I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
do. And I'm going to stick
Mm-hmm.
to my mission. I'm going to stick to my path. I'm going to stick to my mission and my vision. And this is what I'm going to do. And if you want to come along for the ride, you're more than welcome. But if you don't, that's okay. I don't need you, because I'm going to have others along the path that might help in this journey of what I'm doing. And I feel that that's truly where we are.
Yeah. Can you tell people how to get in touch with you or how to
Yeah.
get in touch with different organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a website. It's Achieve Greatness, the number 88, all lowercase.org. So if anybody wants to go on the website, you'll see all about what we've done, what we're doing. It does need to be updated, so please forgive me, because there has been a lot of events that are not on there yet. And in reference to organizations, we're partnering with so many recovery communities and people, because again, Andrew was not into substance use, right? So, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that I'm not going to try to help someone who comes to me and say, hey, my son is suffering from this. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
of an agency? Absolutely, because that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do. That makes you a good human. And
Yep.
a lot of the organizations that we have partnered with are federal organizations like the FBI, Secret Service, Homeland Security, Border Patrol, like you, and it's funny, U.S. Marshals, and it's funny because people always say, well, but you badmouth them. No, I badmouth the people I need to from those organizations. I don't
That's
badmouth
called
the.
accountability.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And and it's funny because someone said to me the other day, they said, if you could be in front of the administration tomorrow, what would your ask be? And you just hit the nail on the head, Jen. Accountability.
Mhm. That's why we are where we are is lack of accountability on everything. And then the desire, I mean, quite frankly, the Republicans have been saying for 30 years that government doesn't work. And I have to question people who would vote for people who say that the government doesn't work and that they don't want it to work. So
Right.
I understand a small government, but when you say you don't want it to work for the people, then that's a different story. But accountability across the board,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's exactly what it's about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what I said. And I said, very simple, very easy accountability. That's all. And I
Mm-hmm.
walk away because we're
Yeah.
not having it. We're not seeing it. I mean, if you or I were in a corporation where we did 1%, 1% of the stuff that we're seeing, my God, we'd not only be in jail, but we'd be out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff that we continue to see is just, and I'm so sick and tired of the comments sometimes that I get from those in local politics. Well, Paula, government is like molasses, it runs slow. How many times are you going to use that as an excuse?
Yeah. These are the people who run the government.
Exactly.
So you're just telling me that you're slow as molasses is what you're telling me. But
Basically.
when people of power need the government to move fast, the government moves very, very fast.
Absolutely. It's all in who you
Hmm.
know, unfortunately.
It's like Matt Gaetz needed to get one of those underage young women that he was having sex with, apparently a passport to get her back into the country because he took her out of the country and she didn't have her passport with her. And he managed to be able to call and get her what she needed. And she didn't have to wait, whatever it is, 4 months for her passport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
you
All
know
right.
i, I'm of the mindset that because of so much that's going on, at the end of the day, we're all going to have our cross to bear. We're going to have our judgment, every single one of us. I don't care who you are. And I hope that people are on the right side because I want to be able to see you again. And that's one of the things I say all the time. And sometimes it makes people really like stop and think because they're like, what? And then they're like, oh, okay. Because if you keep thinking that by you continuing to do what you do and going against people and hurting people or having this evilness about you and you're going to turn out okay, that's not the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Well, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. This was so lovely.